Good afternoon and welcome to On the Spot Motorsports Media. I am your host, Mitchell Gunter, right along with Robert Simpson. And tonight we have Mr. Mike Thermos joining us. And I tell you what, he is more like the godfather of nitrous. So this is going to be a great show for everyone who runs nitrous as a power adder. So you might really want to pay attention tonight of what's going on. But before we dive into that, we've got a couple of commercials, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Reliability to drive thousands of miles. Confidence for those who fly high. Redline oil products give you the power to crush the competition. And a track record of being the best. Redline oil products. You push it to the limit, we'll protect it.
Ready to take your engine to the next level? Scorpion Racing Products delivers precision-engineered, high-performance rocker arms that dominate the track. 100% CNC machined in the USA with aerospace-grade aluminum for unmatched strength and durability. Our rocker arms handle extreme conditions with multiple ratios available to fit your needs. Backed by our exclusive lifetime warranty. When performance matters, choose Scorpion Racing Products. Proven, reliable, unstoppable.
Mr. Thermos, I want to thank you for joining us tonight so we can dive into the history of nitrous oxide. I mean, it's plumb amazing. It's still been around all these years. People are still using it in different applications in racing, from drag racing all the way to drifting and anything and everything in between. So, again, I want to thank you for joining us tonight.
I think it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Mike, thank you so much for coming on. And appreciate you being patient with us. We worked through we had the technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen, getting started here. Thank you for your patience bearing with us. But Mike, you have such a long history in nitrous oxide, having started with your partners, the nitrous oxide system, NOS brand. Tell us what got you started in nitrous oxide. Because before that, you were not in nitrous. You were in nitro, were you not?
Oh, yeah. I've had my experiences with nitro.
But tell us more about it.
I always was a gearhead when I was younger. I mean, I started, when I was 12 years old, I had a motorbike. It goes back, I'm 82 years old now, so this goes back, I was 12 years old. It's in the 50s. And, we, of course, got into racing, and who had the fastest motorbike as kids? We learned how to mill the head and do all the little things that people do. I remember the guy ground my cam on a grinder, and then he had a profile that he matched it up like you make a key, and that's how he put there was no degree in it. He just matched this radical profile, and he had a racing cam. And those were the days. But anyway, that went on and on. We started bracket racing, friends of mine and I, when I was about 18 years old, and it grew, want to go faster and faster. And the funny car started out, and so we had to have a funny car. So we built one, and it was a box chassis, and it was kind of homebrew. But the first ones were like that, and I drove it, and I think I went 180 something in it, and it kind of, got your attention. I think if it ever hit the wall, it would have been a house of cards, but I made it through that segment. And then we got serious, and we actually built a car that you could afford to build in those days. And it kind of followed the Mickey Thompson era. We built a chassis like that. It was right after the other cars with the roll cages. This was a tight cockpit and all that. And we started running it, and there was three of us, and we found out that we didn't have enough money to fool around with this hobby too long. And, so we ran for a summer and a little more time than that. I had a couple partners, and it just got too expensive. And so we bailed out. That's the old car right there. Yeah. It was a nice car. It was a good chassis and everything. And it ran in the sixes. And we had like 85% nitro in it. And I learned all about nitro, what to do, what not to do. But we couldn't afford to stay in the game. So we got out of that. I had another guy, we built an elephant, and we started running that. And it just got so expensive that I had just gotten married. I was about 30 years old and trying to settle down. I had a tune-up shop and did brakes and tune-ups, kind of eked out a living. I taught a little auto shop at night school and over one of the colleges. So I tried to get this damn drag racing out of my system. Well, that's not so easy. So I started paying attention and just being a groupie mechanic and trying to stick to my tuning and whatever. But I was reading Hot Rod one day, and there was a magazine article. An old timer had a 10,000 RPM. He was talking about this nitrous stuff. And I started reading it, and I could see through. I knew now how to make horsepower and what it took, and the fuel was so important, and how nitro worked and everything. And this thing made all these senses. It gives off oxygen. It does all this stuff. So he only was about 3 or 4 miles away from me, his shop, where we grew up in California. So I went over there, and I was just a young whippersnapper asking questions. I don't know that he liked that. I asked too many questions. And so I just bought a kit for my car. I had a Corvette. And I came back. And the kit was all homebrew. It was like the hoses were out of a wrecking yard, and they were all soldered up. And the solenoids were old washing machine solenoids. I didn't know what it was. And I put it on my car. It kind of worked, but then the bottle would get hot, and the pressure would go up, and the solenoid wouldn't open, and that kind of thing, all those little things. So I just kind of learned it. I rewound the coils on the nitrous solenoid, and it worked. So I started to learn it, and I started to think, this stuff's the best thing since bubble gum. You bolt it between the carburetor and the manifold and push a button, you get 100 horsepower, just like that. It's how simple. So I had a friend of mine who was hanging around my shop, Dale, and I said, you got any money? We could sell these darn things. We could build these things. His dad had a machine shop, and we would go over there and whittle out the plates and put them on cars, mostly a Hoggy 4150 carburetor, and the car would pick up. They were fixed jet. They weren't adjustable or anything. And we knew one jet pattern, and we just drilled the holes that size, and it worked. Made, like I say, 100, 115 horsepower, and everything was safe. We didn't have all the sensors and stuff we had to deal with like you do today.
Right.
But anyway, we went out and we started trying to sell these things, and I was still hanging around a lot of the old funny car guys because I knew them. We were back of the pack, but I still enjoyed the funny cars. And in those days, they were dropping the cylinders. They had so much fuel they were trying to pass. The magnetos weren't up to date. So we started offering nitrous for a funny car. And we just put it into the nozzles and got acquainted with a lot of brilliant people, Austin Coyle, and the Max, what was that? The Blue Max. And we had Bernstein and Armstrong. I got acquainted with Armstrong. We shared a lot of great ideas. And he put it on his fuel car because they were dropping cylinders because the motors were so rich. So we just gave it a little kiss of nitrous to get them to light. And that started us going and getting some excitement about it. And then I flew to Indy to the Nationals, and Billy Meyer had put a unit on his car, and he was doing a lot of winning. And he comes over to me and he says, what'd you do for Don? He's got nitrous on his car, Don Perdome. I said, I didn't do anything with the car. So I go over and I look at the car, and I knew his mechanic, Bob Brandt, and I just sat outside the rope. I was a nobody, and I just looked around, and he had a bottle with the little hose going into the pump, the fuel pump. And Bob sees me looking at that, and he goes, "What do you think of that, Mike?" I said, what are you doing here? That's not going to work. Doesn't make any sense. And he says, well, it's kind of, we're not talking about it too much. So I just shrugged my shoulders and went back and told Billy, I don't know what they're doing. They got some crazy thing on that car. They're not thinking much of it. Well, they pull up to the starting line. The guy goes 2/10 quick. Perdome goes 2/10 quicker, breaks the record, blows the motor up. Dave McClellan on the PA system is saying, hey, this nitrous is breaking records. It's the greatest thing. It's all this. Well, I'm thinking, hey, this is pretty good publicity, but I'm not going to tell anybody that he doesn't have it. The next pass, so I go up there and I go right into staging area. I sneak in because I don't have any credentials. And I watch the crew guy, after they light the motor, go down and he goes to the nitrous bottle. He has this little nitrous bottle on the front of the chassis, and he fakes it. He turns it on like he's turning it on, but he doesn't. I watch his head. So I think to myself, wow, they got something going here. But he does it again. He blows the motor up, and he goes 2/10 quicker than the field, backs the record up. Became a famous pass in those, I think it was in 88.
Right.
Anyway, so that was the start of it. Well, then I was friends with Olson, Carl Olson. I went to school with Carl Olson, and he was the tech director. And he came over to me and he goes, hey, all the guys are crying about this nitrous thing because they don't want to get into it because it blows up the motor. I says, well, let me tell you that Perdome isn't running nitrous. I watched the whole act. And anyway, nitrous followed the trend that was left with. It runs like a scalded dog, but it blows up the motor. And I said, well, no, it doesn't do that if you do it right. Well, I couldn't sell my philosophy to anybody. Nobody knew who I was. So they banned it. Well, it sent us walking out of NHRA. And I said, well, where do we go now? We were having so much fun with all the funny cars. That was our legacy. So I said, well, let's go to the second string to IHRA. And I flew out there to Bristol at one of the races. And we checked out. There's two classes, top dragster and top sportsman. There were some pretty neat cars in top sportsman. Scotty Cannon, Robbie Vandergriff with the 57 Chevy. They were classy cars. About the same time, about a week later when I came back, Bill Coleman calls me up. And he says, he got nitrous on there, but it's not doing it like he thought it might do. So he called me. So he had a good car. He worked for Bickle, and he had a first-class car. But he gets mad when I call him a farmer out in Illinois there in Missouri. But but anyway, I said, well, send me your manifold and I'll plumb it up and we'll see what you can do. I said, and I told him, I said, you run these UDRA things, or you run all these like second string events. Why don't you go to an IHRA event and try and go 200 miles an hour? I said, that'll get you some good ink and nuts too. I said, send me your manifold, I'll plumb it up. So I did, and I sent it back to him. So he says, well, I don't know what to do with this stuff. What do you want to do with it? I said, well, I'll fly into Darlington and I'll help you out. And so he, I fly in and we're in line waiting for the gates to open, and all the Southern boys, all the pro stock guys are all laughing at Coolman. He's from the north, and he's just a bracket racer kind of guy. And they're looking at his wing. He has this huge wing on his car. They're going, that's going to slow you down 10 miles an hour. So anyway, we go in the gate and he parks. And the first lapper is going to come up for qualifying. So I said, well, I put a mild jet in here just all he had was a button on the steering wheel. I says, don't hit it off the line. You're just going to blow the tires off the car. Don't grab it till you get the second gear. So he says, okay. So he hits it in qualifying. And I forget what it went, 194, 195. And he goes back in the pits. And Sonny comes over, Sonny Leonard, who built the motor for the car. Well, he did. Coolman bought a kit motor, and then he assembled it. But Sonny was his combination. So Sonny comes over and says, hey, where's that 200 mile an hour run? And Coolman tells him, oh, that's going to be a piece of cake. Well, we were pitted right next to Glidden, Bob Glidden. And so Sonny goes over to Glidden, and he tells Glidden, he goes, see that guy over there? I asked him if he was going to go 200, and he says, he told me it's going to be a piece of cake. Now, you got to remember, nobody knows about nitrous. Nobody knows a thing about it.
Right.
And so I tell Coleman, okay, we're going to step it up a little bit. Then we put a little bigger jet in it, and it was a early Fogger kit. And I said, now, same thing. When you go up the line, don't hit it in low gear. Maybe take it to second gear. So he does. We stage a car. He goes down. Well, he makes a lap. That thing hits second gear. He hits that button, and front wheels come up about 8 inches, and they don't let him down to the 1,000-foot mark. And he goes to the lights 202, and everybody just couldn't believe it. And Glidden had gone 199 on a 650-inch motor, so everybody was shooting for that 200. And Coolman, we became good friends after that. But he was just this bracket guy that went to the front of the pack real quick. Well, fast forward, kind of fun story, because we were selling a lot of kits to Summit. And Summit came to me and asked about Coolman. You know, we were thinking about sponsoring him. So I said, well, that's the best thing you can do. I said, you know, he's not like a Glidden or a big name guy. I said, and you sell to these mail order guys all over the United States, all over the world. I said, that's the kind of guy that needs your product. And it shows that he went 200 miles an hour right out of the box like that. So he got a good deal, and he put together a program, and we became part of it. I mean, and some of the other guys started putting nitrous on, Robbie Vandergriff, Scotty Cannon, and all these guys who started. And I'd go to the races. I had a sidekick, Waddy, that was plenty sharp on this stuff. And he was good with the racers. And we really gave it an effort in IHRA. And we did that for a semester, and then they did a quick 8. And I think Ram took over that for a year. And then we came back, and Brett Kepner said, hey, they're going to put a class together called Pro Modified. I think he named it. And would we support it? So we did. And that was the start of Pro Mod. And the Charlie Carpenters and all those guys, we had a hell of a thing going, and it was a lot of fun. And we were getting off on our racing from when I couldn't afford to race to where we were turning a buck and still having a lot of fun. And it actually helped IHRA build a real class for their divisions and things, because they had a second string top fuel class and funny car class. I don't even think they had funny cars then, but it became really a fun class, because you had a real mix. You had a mix of shoeboxes, late model cars, you had blown cars, turbo cars, and alcohol, gasoline, and it all kind of came together. And it was all they were all doing battle. So the crowds, they all had an appeal to different people. Very, very good on diversity.
Right.
Well, anyway, it grew and grew and grew, and I forget what exactly. Oh, we were right on top of our game, and Holly comes up and throws a bunch of money on the table and says, we want to buy you guys, Dale and myself. Well, we're just kind of a bunch of old bracket racers ourselves, so we started saying, stack the deck a little more, and they kept stacking the deck. So finally we said, you know, we're not getting any younger. I was, I think, 55 at the time. I says, maybe it's time. So we cashed in, sold it to Holly. I had to sit out a 5-year do not compete, which I did. And Dale, my partner, he's actually, you might have heard about some of his stuff. We're still good friends. We see each other all the time. We invested the money in some real estate, and so we generated a little retirement out of that. And he started building the compressed air superchargers, which is a whole new subject. That's his deal. So that came from him and I, and it's his deal, but I'm waving the flag for it because it's such a dynamic product. And he took the engineer we had, and they got together, and he's down the street from me, and I go visit him and stuff, and I love it because it makes sense technically wise that I said the biggest thing with you better be careful. It's so good you're going to get banned, just like nitrous good. So the boys are just learning about it, but once they learn about it, it's going to be interesting because the temperature is 0 degrees going into the plenum. So 15 pounds of boost is like 20, 25 pounds of boost. And so far, they haven't even turned up the wick on the thing. And when they do, it's going to be unreal. These guys, I don't know if you realize it or not, but some of these blown cars, like in John Force's car and talking to Alan Johnson and some of the guys that are really on top of this stuff, they got 60 PSI in the manifold, 4 or 5 atmospheres.
Right.
I could get into some of the technical stuff. I don't want to do that right now, but there's some reasons why you can't do that with nitrous. You can't just keep putting nitrous in because all hell's going to break loose if you do. But it is what it is, and it makes good horsepower for what it's supposed to. We can't outrun a 60-pound manifold full of nitro. But most of the market got developed on the street, and it afforded us to really spend contingency programs and go after the product. And you got to remember, it was before COVID, and all the warehouses all over the United States we were selling all of them. We were doing pretty good. Got a lot of fun.
Well,
but that's a story on where we were. I opened up a little shop because, if I sat home, my wife drive me crazy, and I'm not going to sit out on the patio. So I'm 82 years old now, but I just was at the IHRA race at Ohio last weekend, trying to get them interested in a valve we come out. There's been some fires and stuff that they're trying to resolve. And I think I got something that'll work for them.
Yep. Actually,
I was out pitching that.
We saw the example of it, the safety valve that you produce to help with the turn off nitrous oxide from outside the car in a safety manner. And it's a great product. So I encourage everybody who's listening to On the Spot Motorsports Media today with Mike Thermos, the godfather of nitrous oxide. For safety's sake, go look at Nitrous Supply, which is his business, and he has 2 valves demonstrations that I saw. One's a big lever and one's a pull Morse cable to help turn nitrous off from outside the car. Because we've all seen examples where incidents happen to the car, spit back through the intake, whatever, fire under the hood, and you always see people squirming or running around the car trying to turn the bottle off, especially if the driver's out and you see somebody jump back in trying to turn it off. This is a safer manner to do it.
Yeah.
So that's good.
We're actually going to post both of those turn-off valves, those levers that you can use both inside the car and outside the car on our page after this interview. And I think it's a great safety tool to not just protect the driver and get
you
control,
mentioned
but
that
it also protects the safety team coming to your rescue.
Yeah, you got to shut the nitrous off because whatever's burning is going to continue to burn, and nitrous gives off its oxygen at 560 70 degrees. And so at those temperatures, which they are when the fire is going, the nitrous is giving off its oxygen. And so it's coming out at 900 psi. So your fire extinguisher is only pressurized to maybe 150 psi in a lot of chemical fire extinguishers, and it just blows the chemical out of the way, and the fire continues to burn, and you can't put it out. And they'll exhaust the fire extinguisher and then sit there and look at it. Somebody's got to shut that nitrous bottle down. And I've seen them with trying to pull the Zeus fasteners out in the trunk to get to the bottle. For those that have it in the trunk, I've seen the crew chief dive through the window or open the door and dive in there and try and turn the valve and get the valve off, and you have to sit there and crank it off. All that has to happen, the driver reaches down by his thigh and pulls a little lever. That's very lightly done. It's not even hard to pull because the ball is real smooth in there. It's a big ball valve. And it turns it off. If he's unconscious or something, the starting line guy who's ever in the proximity can run to the back of the car and grab the little T-bar and just pull it. It's like a Morris cable on it and activate it from there. Shut the fire right off.
And, well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Thermos, I really do appreciate you, coming up with that and engineering it. And it is something that is very much needed. All the way from bracket racing, all the way up through every category of drag racing and other racing events. I mean, people use nitrous on their boats, speed boats racing and stuff like that. And it's just as important to have it on there as well.
Well, nitrous has been exciting for me. Its home is in drag racing. It's not for, well, you can use it at Bonneville, and it's not really used in road racing that much. Usually gets banned wherever it goes because it gives such an advantage.
Right.
I mean, I got stories that come from Musey and Ricky Smith and some of those guys. Some of the Dodge boys and all the controversy. And I can't say too much there.
I know. I want you to tell me on the side about that one. That's what I want to hear on the side.
But and speaking of Ricky, he won this past weekend at IHRA event.
I talked to him out there. I was out there. I talked to him. I showed him the valve. Now they're all computer control. He runs a lot of Musey stuff, and they've got these controls now. And his point was, the computer won't even let the nitrous on unless the motor's going 3,000 RPM. And it has a lot of safety devices built into the computer. And my thoughts are, that's great. And you guys are kind of a step ahead of most of the guys. But there's still a lot of guys that come in and have carburetors that run them the old-fashioned way. And they work good. But it's those guys that are going to get in trouble so much. So it's a base, it's a valve in the middle of the line. It doesn't restrict. I made it big enough so it doesn't restrict. In fact, you have to shrink it down in most cases. Most guys use a -6 hose. It'll go on a -8 hose, but believe me, you don't need day flow in a nitrous kid. You send the heads to Kansas City with that kind of flow rate.
Right.
Mike, you were telling me something earlier, which I thought was fascinating. I never knew about nitrous. You said, and I'm paraphrasing, that nitrous doesn't pressurize your intake like a blower or turbocharger does. Therefore, you will reach the limitations of nitrous, and the only way to make more power is with displacement. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah, very much. Think about it for a minute. What creates vacuum? The vacuum is created by the piston on an intake stroke. It comes down and it sucks so much air in. Now you got to remember, every time you put 14.7, which is atmosphere, approximately, depending on altitude density, but it goes in the motor. So when you got 14 inches, 15 inches of vacuum, that's 1 atmosphere. Well, that's the equivalent of 14.7 pounds that a blower puts in.
Right.
Well, if these guys are putting in 60 PSI, how many atmospheres is that? That's about 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I mean, so with nitrous, you get one in because you take one lick. Now, what happens is the flow stops, the airflow stops. So you can't get any more in. There's nothing pressurizing it, putting it in. So that's all you can put in. If you keep trying to just put a bigger jet in there, it just comes out in standoff. You can see it on a dyno. It's just 6 inches above the carburetor. It's coming out of the carburetor. It won't go in. Just because it going in the manifold doesn't mean it's going to go in the piston.
Correct.
There's no vacuum to draw it in, where a blower pushes it in. That's the first thing. So the only way to get any more, you got to remember this rule too. Horsepower is relative to how much fuel you can burn per given amount of time. If you follow that rule, that's what the funny car fuelers do. And what are they burning now? They're building a gallon and a half a second. Now you think about that, a gallon and a half a second. You go outside and you go get an average mop bucket. It's about 2.5 gallons. Put two of them on the ground, and go get your garden hose and see if you can fill that bucket up in 4 seconds. Or 2 buckets up, and think of what comes out of a garden hose. That's an 8-cylinder, and that's what those fuel cars are burning for fuel. So it's all about burning fuel. We're burning more fuel. Well, Musi and these guys have learned they burn. I mean, they have 800, 900, what's his motor now? 969, something in that neighborhood. Cubic inch motors. I got a piston and a Pats. The thing's like a coffee can. It's huge. But that's what it's gotten to, and they're very expensive to build, and they torque monsters. But they spin them too. They spin them pretty good too. But you're not gonna run with some of these guys now that are running 60 psi in the manifold. I wish we could, but we can't. No. Let us use nitro. That's a whole new ballgame.
If you allow to change the fuel up, like you said, that would, because that's adding another energy source.
Well, it's, you get my age, and you've seen a lot in your time if you've hung around drag strip and racing and being a crazy guy, But I lost my thought now. It's
running nitro with nitrous.
Yeah, it's, you got to be very, very careful. And the reason is nitro doesn't it gives off the same oxygen molecule at 570 degrees too. Isn't that funny? That nitrous gives it off at 570 and nitro. I happened to be eavesdropping in a seminar they were giving to the fuel guys out of Pomona, and the guy from Sunoco was talking about it, an engineer, and he was talking about how nitro works. And nitro doesn't give off its oxygen until it gets to 570 degrees. So if you put a ton of nitrous and nitro in that motor, you're going to give off a ton of oxygen all at once at 570 degrees. I don't know if that's taking place on compression or on combustion, on the power string. But another just a quick little topic is years ago when we were acquainted with a lot of these guys, I don't know if the young guys will remember, but Austin Quayle is kind of a legendary name in racing. Yeah. I talk to Austin often. I'm not trying to name drop, but he's a brilliant man. And we talked about nitrous. He's run nitrous before on the street when he was a kid. And we share a lot of things. Well, years ago, when Force was starting to really gallop, so to speak, Superflow had loaned us, I forget what year it was, what they call a cylinder analysis computer. And we had a dyno, and they said we could use this thing and we could plot cylinder pressure, which, if you think about it for a minute, how really important that is. Cam timing, this, and this, it all balances down to cylinder pressure.
Right.
And they're boasting about having 11,000 psi in the cylinder pressure in a top fuel car now. This is blowing the spark plug electrodes right out. They mic the swage on the spark plugs before they put them in now. I don't know if a lot of guys know that now, but because it'll blow the porcelain right out of the plug. And they'll take a brand new plug and they can tell, and they'll test it, and they'll see if it's showing air bubbles in the water, that discard that plug. They want a plug that crimping is really tight. I just learned that. I didn't know that, and I was fascinated by that. But years ago, Quail wanted to see our data. We did that with a motor on the dyno. And you drill out a number one cylinder, and you put a transducer in there, and then it takes every tenth of a degree, it'll tell you what the cylinder pressure is, and you can actually map the pressure curve.
Right.
Well, we did that. I think we got like around 6,000 PSI, and it was real jagged, and you had to smooth it out. And, so Quail calls, and he says, hey, I want to see your data, because we're going to do some stuff on the dyno too with the top fuel motor. So, not on the dyno, but in the car.
Right.
So I did that, and we he took it and he drilled out a head and he put it in and he tested it. I hadn't seen him for a few months. I saw him out the drags, and I said, "Did you ever do that test?" And he says, "Oh yeah, we did it. It's some interesting stuff." I said, "Well, I showed you mine. You got to show me yours."
So share that information.
So he goes, "Well, you're not a competitor." So he says, "Let me tell you something. It's out of the bag now. This goes back, God, I don't know, 10 years ago." And I go, "Well, we did 6,000 PSI." He says, we went up, we got 11,000 PSI. He says, "I got good news and I got bad news." I said, "Well, tell me the bad news first." He says, "Well, we got 3 power strokes and we blew the transducer out of the head." I said, "Well, what's the good news then?" "Well, we got 3 power strokes. We got readings on 3 power strokes."
We got this much.
And he said, I said, "So what happened?" He goes, "Well, we went to 11,000 PSI. Well, my first concern was, well, that's almost double what we got. Yeah, Nitro's really can put together a home run." And he goes, no, that's not what impresses me. He says, "Check this out." He says, "When did you guys get peak cylinder pressure?" I said, "At 15 degrees after top dead center." And he says, I said, "So you light it at 30 degrees, it starts to burn. By the time it comes over top dead center and the cylinder building pressure at 15 degrees after top dead center, it's peak cylinder pressure."
Right.
It smacks the piston and it sends it down. I says, "Now, what did you get?" He goes, "Well, let me tell you this." He says, "We got 11,000 PSI, but he says at 45 degrees after top dead center, we still had 9,500 PSI in the cylinder." So what does that tell you?
Smokes.
That's telling you the volume of fuel that's burning is still burning and expanding all the way down the power stroke. You can hear it in the cars. They just bog and they're putting pressure. Where we smack the piston and send it down, most unblown cars do that. Or the nitro, the way it burns, there's so much volume that it actually is slowing the burning down at a rate that is burning all the way down, almost like a controlled direct cylinder. But it can't be fuel injection, the fuel's doing that. And so it gets down, and the exhaust valve is supposed to open up, and it's still got 1,800 PSI in the cylinder. So the first thing that happens is the exhaust valve can't open. So Quail tells me that, so we got to go to a 5/8" push rod and chromoly push rod. So they do that. That fixes that problem. He says it gets the bottom dead center. It's still got 1,600 PSI in the cylinder. It wants to push the crank right out through the mains. So they fix that. He says, and heaven help you if that intake opens and there's still 1,600 PSI in the manifold. He says it's going to blow the intake, blow the blower off and blow the body off. Remember, they all had problems with the bodies blowing off.
Yep.
So I think what they did is, he says, we had to change some of the cam profiling and some of the things on these cars to get them to run. And it was fun to talk about that. I enjoy that kind of physics and
It just goes to show you how much ingenuity that goes in to running those funny cars.
Oh yeah. There's so much. And I love bench racing with those guys.
Well, you see, you're talking about the nitro cars, but over the years, you have worked with engine builders and testing yourself to refine what you got to make it more efficient. You were telling me that, for example, anybody that buys a nitrous kit, a general nitrous kit, that they're set up to be on the safe side, on the rich side. And then through experience, you've learned on where the parameters are to make things safe. But let's say the novice that starts with nitrous, whatever it might be, street car, bracket car, whatever like that. What are some of the basics that's easy to miss? But what's some of the most basic things to be able to run nitrous safely and repetitively?
Well, we used to use a rule of thumb. We came across what we felt was good power, but safe. And that was about whatever the motor's making for horsepower. Usually you can kick it up to 35 or 40% and stay within a realm of sanity. And you certainly can go more than that, but just like you tip the can to it too. But that's usually what we'll recommend. Timing becomes more important actually than the lean mixture. Sometimes a lean mixture will just nosedive and won't pull like a fat mixture. But if you don't have the timing right, all hell breaks loose. And you're going to find that you've sped the burning rate up as opposed to slowing the burning rate down in the nitro car. You've actually sped the burning rate up with nitrous. So we have some basic rules. People challenge them all the time. And yes, you can challenge them if you're that sharp on them, but the basic rule is for every 50 horsepower, about 2 degrees retard. Now, the only thing that's wrong with that is it depends on if you got a flat top piston or you got a kicker in your piston. They play a role in how efficiency your flow rates are. Will change that somewhat. Because some guys will say that you can't use that rule of thumb, and they're right. You can if you're doing a motor that's well designed. It's for nitrous oxide. But the general rule is about 2 degrees. Guys call up. I don't know what they got for pistons, and half of them don't know either. And say, kick 2 degrees out of the timing, and you'll be safe.
Well, I know I talk to a lot of people, and they always come to me because I run nitrous on my car, and they're like, well, I plan on running nitrous on mine. And I says, well, no matter what you do, you need to get it to somebody that's got a dyno. You need to go through there, and you need to set it up, and you need to set it up correctly. Because if you don't have the right airflow mixture, you're going to be walking home after you use it. I said it's very important to spend the extra money, put it on a dyno, and make sure you get everything corrected. And so like for me, used to when I was in my Fords and racing Fords, I would use a dry kit and spray the dry kit through the mass air meter to make everything work. Well, now I'm racing Dodge, and so I've got a plate system that sits right behind the throttle body. And so it mixes the nitrous and the fuel together as it goes through the manifold.
Right.
But in both situations, you need to put it on the dyno and make sure that you're in the right parameters so you don't destroy something.
Well, over the years, it's the situation's changed. We didn't have access to chassis dynos as much as they have today. And today's dynos are outfitted with an air-fuel mixture and the exhaust. And so the ratio doesn't really change. If you're a 12.5, 12 to 1 ratio, normally aspirated, shoot for those ratios. I mean, that's what you're going to shoot for. You can fudge them a little bit. You can make them, 11 to 1 or so. Sometimes when you have a blown situation, whether it's a Pro Charger or 671 on the car, you're going to find some guys are running 9 to 1 on their exhaust temperatures. or air fuel, actually oxy-sensitive.
Right.
And that's going to it'll burn that. It doesn't have any trouble doing that. And I like to do that because it's a little bit safe.
Right.
Because you don't want to go into that crispy.
No, sir. Not at all.
No, you don't.
And something that's another thing that's really, incredible about nitrous is not just the horsepower gain that you get from it, but also the torque. I mean, the torque is just unreal, and that's what really gets you going down the track is that torque. So I'll give you an example, and other people examples. So I had a Ford. Well, it was actually a Mercury Cougar, and I actually took out the improved PI heads that Ford came out with in a Mustang, and I put that Mustang engine in the car. And so, by doing that, it was a dry kit, and I want to say before we put the nitrous to it, I want to say we were probably at 290 horsepower, and the torque was really low. It was like three something, and then we sprayed it. I think it went to 360 horsepower, because I actually was spraying a 100-shot jet, and we decided to go to a 70-shot jet, and we actually picked up an extra 25 horsepower by going lower, and it picked the torque over 400 foot-pounds of torque on that little 4.6 liter engine at the rear wheels. Yeah. So it's just really amazing how much torque you can get.
We learned something on the dyno. We always had that figure in our head about fuel makes horsepower, and we'd calibrate the fuel on the dyno, and we'd make a run, and it'd make 50 more horsepower than the fuel that was showing the fuel going through the brake specific fuel consumption. And we go, damn, look at the fuel. It's down to 0.27. Man, this really makes this motor efficient. And we were tearing our hair out. Where did that extra horsepower come from? And we finally the engineers, talked to a few of these engineers. We were just a bunch of racers. And they explained to us that there's kinetic energy when the molecule breaks, when the oxygen is released. And when that happens, splitting the molecule itself is energy.
Right.
I explain it because I'm not a physicist, but what it is, it's kind of like the Earth and the moon's going around the Earth, and it's going around and around and around. The sun comes a little bit closer, and it gets up to 570 degrees. There's that temperature again. When it gets to 570 degrees, this orbit of the moon is sped up considerably. Now there's centrifugal force involved, and at 570 degrees, the moon flies out of orbit. That's kinetic energy. And that comes out on the dyno, but doesn't get calibrated as fuel. It just gives you more torque without burning fuel. And so that's where that energy came from. And we started learning more about that. But that's a whole nother subject. It's called disassociation of the nitrous that a lot of people in racing don't understand. I didn't at first. I've learned it over the years. But it's when that molecule splits, you got to be very careful with that. That's why I see in staging area, the guys with the torches on the bottle. No.
Never.
You get that, or they'll get worse with it. They'll put it in one spot. Two things happen. The first thing is most people understand it. You can anneal the aluminum about the 35th time you do it. It's annealed. It's going to break the bottle because you're going to have 1,200 psi in there, and the bottle's only good for 1,000. It says it's 1,800, but you annealed it. So most guys don't do it like that. But the second thing is that when I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, but when that molecule breaks in the bottle like that, and the pressure will rise because that molecule goes 80 times its size, and the bottle expands and it blows the safety. Well, the safety only has a little quarter-inch hole.
Right.
And these molecules are just expanding, and it tries to get out that little hole. Then it just blows the bottle up.
Yep.
There's
It
been people
floats.
killed. There was a death a few weeks ago. I was talking to the engineer that worked for us, and I didn't realize this till last week. But a guy had done some welding, and he welded 2 1/4-inch plates together, and he took a nitrous bottle to cool it, and he turned the valve on, and he blew this nitrous on this 1,500-degree temperature, and it just blew up like a stick of dynamite in his face. And the guy died. I didn't hear any more than that on it.
Gee whiz.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of, or not seen, but heard a lot of stories. Been in court a few times to represent some of these companies where people have done things, and there's been some issues. I don't profess to know it all, but being an old drag racer, I like to play it as safe as I can. And
Yeah.
keep
And,
everybody
and,
healthy.
and I agree with you 100%, man. I cannot stand watching somebody warm up a bottle with a torch. I just shake my head at them. That's not the right way to do it. Get you a bottle warmer, keep a gauge on there, and with today's technology, you can set it once the bottle reaches that certain pressure, it cuts the bottle heater off.
Yeah.
And
It usually keeps them in a tank,
right?
in a water tank. The temperature, he dips them in before he's going to run. He takes them out.
Right. Now tell us, where did you come up with the pressure of 900 psi as being a standard for running the bottles at?
Well, I don't know if that's a stand. About 950, right in there seems to be a balance of. If sometimes the guys will run them 1,050 psi, and when you leave the starting line, the seat of the pants really gets a hold of you and bangs you off the line. But the problem with it is it drops very rapidly. So 200 feet out, the pressure is 800 psi. So you got to get a happy medium on the curve. So 900 seems to be right in that area there. Seems to be where you establish. It'll drop when you open that cylinder. The thing will drop to maybe 900 from 950, but it'll stay there. If you go to 1050 and you tune it to 1050 and you open that cylinder, it'll drop to 850. So the ratio changes considerably. So if you're trying to get a balance of power, you don't really have a pump with nitrous. The pressure of the bottle is what's sending it down the line.
Right.
And,
I guess it's where a nitrous push system would help in some cases, right? For
they
when
do
nitrous
that.
is being used.
They've done that.
Yeah, I think a lot of associations has outlawed them.
That, and they've outlawed one of the things the guys were chasing that I believed in or seemed to work. We do it to how we fill bottles here. Is we have a big bottle in the back, and I'm just trying to fix my thing so it doesn't go. I got to wiggle my mouse here, lose the connection. It comes out of the big bottle, the 75-pound bottle, and it goes to a freezer, and we get it ice cold, and then we send it up to fill a bottle on a scale. So we don't lose the pressure, but we condense the nitrous, and when the nitrous goes in the bottle to fill, it ices the bottle up very cold. It drops the temperature of the filling bottle, and it fills right up very easily. And we have a little pump too that runs off of air pressure, and because the guys will come in and they'll bring a bottle in out of their trunk, and it'll be 1,000 psi, but it'll only have 3 pounds in it. And they want you to top it off. They're going to the races. And so you put it on there, and the whole pump is working away, trying to put, volume into this thing. So in that case, we'll throw them in the freezer for a half hour, get them cold, and then fill them, and then it'll fill.
Yep, that's what I do all the time. I'll throw it in the freezer. People usually at work, they'll open up the freezer door to go get their snack out of there and say, "What is this thing in the freezer?"
Yeah, I used to keep all my frozen lunches in there.
I say, don't let it roll out and drop on your toe, because it'll probably take your toe right off.
We had we were filling a bottle one day, and what happened? Oh, the line broke. Oh my God. The whole store, we have a little storefront counter, and it was like a graveyard because it's heavier than air. So this stuff came, everybody ran for the hills, and this thing's going fizzling all over the place. And we had cameras, so we went back on the camera. I put it on YouTube, but it filled it came up to the counters. It was about 4 feet, like graveyard, like a graveyard fog. And everybody was outside. They didn't know what the hell happened. So we just let it blow out, turn some fans on. We were all laughing for a while.
Yeah, I imagine. Now, Mike, you were telling me something when you mentioned nitrous, that it not only produces power, but it produces a tremendous amount of torque. And you were saying that when you first got involved with Bill Coolman, right when he was going to Darlington, you were talking to him about his particular combination, the gearing combination, and how and how the engine builder, how Sonny at the time says, no, don't put this gear in it. You were saying what gear to put in, and Mike was kind of confused. You don't mind share with everybody a little story just on the gearing alone?
Well, Bill and I were talking. We're good friends, Bill. And when we were doing this, I said, by the way, I said, he had like a 488 gear in there or something. And I said, that's too, you're going to run out of gear at the 1,000-foot mark. They were running a quarter mile in those days. And I said, you got the 410 or a 430 or something? And he mentioned he had a 430 Pumpkin, had a Ford rear in it. I said, put that in. I said, you got to. And so I don't know if he trusted me or not, but he went to Sonny and he asked Sonny, called up Sonny and said, hey, I'm putting nitrous on my car. Well, in those days, Sonny, and I loved Sonny, he was great. We really became good friends. I hated to see him, his passing, because I got along with Sonny really good. And he said, who told you to put a 430 gear in? Coleman said, well, I just said that. I want to put a 430 gear. And he only had a 615-inch motor. And Sonny says, well, and it was a kit motor. Coolman put it together. I mean, it was out of a kit. So, but it was out of Sonny's shop. And so Sonny says, hey, you can't, I love my motors, but a 615-inch motor isn't going to pull a 430 gear. So then he calls me back, and we talk to each other. And I tell him, I said, look, I'm going to hand you 100 cubic inches. That's what nitrous is going to feel like.
Right.
So what would you do to the car? How would you map your gear out if you had 100 cubic inches more? So that's what he did. And it was out of gear. If he'd left that 488, it would have been out of gear. He would have just nosed over and gone the same speed. You want it to carry through the lights.
Right.
Turbo or blower is the same way. You got more torque. When I explained the torque versus horsepower to somebody, because nitrous is just all about torque. Horsepower, all horsepower is a measurement of how much RPM and torque there is. That's the equation that gives you horsepower. But what really moves the car is torque. And I compare it to like a baseball player. If you're going to run from first base to second base, and you got this tall, lanky guy, and he can run faster than this guy with big thighs that can really gallop, really come out of the gate strong. And they're going to steal second base. They both take off. The lanky guy can run faster than the short, stocky guy, but the stocky guy is going to get to second base first. And here comes the lanky guy at a faster mile an hour. I mean, that's kind of corny, but it's...
No, but I see what you're saying. The torque is what gets you there. And,
the RPM is a measurement of that torque with RPM. Think about a fuel car, how much torque it has, and how many times it turns in a quarter mile with the gear they got. I forget what the gear is, 226 or something?
Or 290 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing is going... It might go 800 RPM in the whole quarter mile. Might only turn over 800 times, 500 times. I don't know I didn't do the math, but You do the math on it, and you can hear it just boom, boom, boom. Those things go down. You can watch the flames just each cylinder fire.
Right.
Push that thing all the way down.
You just explained something which makes a lot of sense now. A properly tuned and set up nitrous car will absolutely thunder in 60 foot to 100 foot compared to a blower or nitrous car that I've seen. Okay, one set up properly equal. Okay, I mean, even on the street stuff, the nitrous set up right, hooked up right, the car will get the move quicker. Now, I can't say the other end, but definitely on the front half.
Well, sure. What happens is, and you got to be, that's one of the good and bad sides of nitrous, is it doesn't have a curve to it unless you have one system, two systems, three systems, that kind of thing. A chunk goes in. When we first started, a lot of people were anti-nitrous because they said, well, there's no curve to it, like a blower. A blower parallels the motor as it goes up. And the flow rate goes up. It doesn't know a flow rate. That's why we tell them, don't kick it into 3,000 RPM because you're liable to make it want to go the other way.
Back it up.
You got nitrous going in, going off, and the piston isn't coming over the top now. But it doesn't matter. You throw it in there, and it will find its way. Now, it'll give you a lot of gobs of more torque. The blower doesn't put out air until you spin it harder. So these guys come to the starting line, and they got to stick it down to 6,000 RPM before the light goes green. And then it's got the air movement, and everything's going. You don't need a lot. You got to remember, you're putting 35% oxygen over 21% naturally aspirated. So, and you got to remember too, we didn't talk about it, but the nitrogen plays a big role in the combustion process, and most people don't talk about that. All they figure is the oxygen. So going back to some basics, the air you breathe is about 21% oxygen. The rest of it's nitrogen with a little helium and various gases in it. But the oxygen is what is making the engine go. So now you bring nitrous to the party. Party's got 2 parts nitrogen, 1 part oxygen. Well, that's over 33% as opposed to 21%. So you're bringing that to the party. That 33%. That's why it does what it does. But what most people don't think about it. Wait a minute. You erase the nitrogen coming in by a third. So what does that do to the combustion process? For lack of engineering skills, if you will, it's like a big piece of foam rubber goes in with it. So when that molecule splits and that nitrogen comes out of it, it absorbs that explosion that the nitrous is giving it. That's why you can't just use oxygen, because if you just put oxygen in, it's just going to explode and hammer, crack the block, or blow the head off the thing. Where this here, think of it as a big wad of foam is going around this combustion process, and it's shock absorbing the combustion. That's why nitrous works and oxygen doesn't. But there's a limit. You can't just keep shoving it in and get 80% nitrous in there, because now you have no more nitrogen in there to absorb, and that's why you get into detonation, and that's why everything starts to rear its ugly head. So you got to kind of.
You explained it like that, and it sounds so basic. That's a very good explanation, Mike. That actually explained a lot to me. It really did.
When we got into it, and when we learned from funny car racing days, and we really studied, how a motor works, and you think about it, everything in the industry is to burn more fuel. Fuel is easy to get in the motor because it's a liquid. It can come in through a 1/4-inch hole or an 1/8-inch hole or whatever size. You can get fuel through a motor, unless you're a funny car fuel car, which now you got 1 3/4
fuel line. Yeah.
But in a normally type of car, we can get fuel in. That's not the problem. It's the air. We got to pass air through that thing, and that's where the trick lies. So what do? What's the first thing a kid learns? Hey, put a cam in. What does a cam do? It holds the valve open longer so it can take a bigger drink of air. What did two carburetors do as opposed to one carburetor? Allows you more air to get sucked in. So you put more. Everything is when you bore a motor out, it doesn't make horsepower because it's bigger. It makes horsepower because it consumes more air and you're able to burn more fuel. So everything that is in the motor that's why they say that the mag or whatever doesn't make horsepower. It just, if you get it right, it will make horsepower. If you got it wrong, but it won't make horsepower. Fuel and oxygen and air make horsepower. And so to get that into the motor, every supercharger just packs it in. 15 pounds, 30 pounds, whatever you want it to be.
Right.
So we looked at that and we go, wait a minute. We scratched our head and we look at nitrous and we go, well, why don't we just pour it in? Like that seems, you don't have to have a big old port. You don't have to port and polish anything. You don't have to have a big cubic inch motor. You just got to make sure your container can contain what you're going to do to it.
Right.
We learned that in still racing real quick. You're only as good as your container. That's called the ninja block. And you can swim right down the wall if it ain't right. And anyway, so you're filling that cylinder up with air, with oxygen, and you're putting fuel with it.
Oh,
I like the subject of it.
You made it sound so simple. I mean, I know there's more to it, but you're right. You're right. Everything you just said completely makes sense.
If you got an understanding of physics, what I get off on a lot is I'm an old friend with all the old timers, and Tom Prock, who worked for Venolia. I knew him. He used to come over here, and the guys from Venolia, and now Frankie, the young brother, all the older brothers, Joe and everybody have passed on, but Frankie had it. We go to breakfast all the time. But Prock worked over there till they finally closed the place down. But Prock was brilliant in his own mind years ago when he worked for Venolia, and he ran a funny car, the custom car out of Detroit. And I used to love to talk to him. Well, that whole family, I mean, you talk about people that like drag racing. You got Jimmy, and you got the kid now, Austin. Yeah. Jeff, people don't know too much about Jeff. Jeff has worked for us. He was brilliant in his thoughts. We put him on the tech lines, and he was a real hard racer. I mean, he shared thoughts with his brother. Jimmy's his brother, and he built a reputation on building nitrous kits and tuning cars and things like that. He's out of Florida now. He's down by Bradenton. Applied Nitrous is the name of his place. Yeah. And but we would go back to Indy, and I would we'd hang out, and we go to Prock's house for dinner. And Jimmy and Jeff and the dad and the mom, Vicky, we'd all sit and they'd feed us dinner after qualifying at Indy with the Nationals. And Jimmy would come out, and we'd come out in the living room, and we just bench race for a couple hours. And God, you just listen to some of these guys that run these fuel cars and stuff was so amazing. The thought process, and you pick up on a lot of that stuff. And then Nitrous was just a place that we could go and make a living at it. We didn't have a lot of competition. And so we just carried the ball up the field as best we could and tried to be, sincere with everybody and straight up. And we pulled it off. And a lot of times.
I'd say so.
Hey, Mike, you were telling me, I was thinking you had a cougar, you said.
Yeah, so
I have a great little short story of a street cougar.
What's that?
His car.
No. I was listening to you. Go ahead.
Oh, anyway. Well, years ago, it goes back 45 years ago, and Dale and I, he was the other half of NOS, he had a cougar. It's old beat up thing. We didn't have any money. We were starting out. and he had a Cougar. I forget what motor was in it. What did they come with? 351s?
351s, 460s,
I think this was
302s, things like that.
I think I had a 351 if I remember. And he had, you remember scavengers that went under the car? The muffler would hang down under the car.
Right.
Made terrible noise because it harmonicked off the floorboard of the car. And he had that car. Well, I think we put our first kit together. We didn't have dyno or anything to test it on. And I go, well, let's test it on your Cougar. And he had a Holly on it. So we put it under there, a 4150, and we put it on there. And I took the button, and I had the button in my hand, and he was driving the car. And I said, okay, you floor it, and then give me a nod, and I'll hit the button, and we'll see what happens. And so he hits the button. I mean, he hits the floor, goes out about rolling at about 30 miles an hour, and it's kind of peeling out. And I hit the button. I'm holding the button down, and it lights the tires, and it's cooking. It's making a pass. And then he gets sideways, and he lets off the gas. Well, I'm still holding the damn button. And so it fills up the phlegm, and it goes boom. Well, it actually didn't even hurt the carburetor because it was a cast iron, big old bulky thing. But it blew the mufflers right off the car. The scavengers and everything blew off the car. And we had to pull over and then go back, and they were hot, and get towels and bring the mufflers and throw them in the trunk and put them back on because it filled the exhaust pipe up. And then it just got hot, and the heat came in and blew. And one of our buddies was watching us, and he goes, "Oh, you guys got it all right now, you know." So
you're so fancy, blew the exhaust off.
We had one that we were in my shop, and we put this nitrous on a 70 Chrysler 340. Do they have 340s or 270s?
Yeah.
Had two-barrel. No, it had four-barrel, the real performance one. It was my buddy's car. And he fired it up, and he was winging it. Wham, wham, wham. And I don't think the choke was quite open yet. And I said, well, hit the nitrous. Let's see how it sounds. And he hit the nitrous, and it went bang, and it blew the butterflies right out of the carburetor. So we learned the hard way, but we learned.
You had some good buddies if they kept coming back. You know that, right? You had some good friends if they kept
You know what
coming
not to do. There's no success like failure, right?
Well,
Right, there
I
you-
did. The reason why I had to go to that PI Performance Head 4.6 liter, because the original motor in there, I burnt 2 pistons up in it.
You can do that.
It went lean on me.
Yeah. If you got everything right and it goes lean, and you can't be too rich either. It'll go down and pull the ring lands and all that stuff. The biggest thing you got to watch on stock motors is the ring gap. Because I saw Freiburger one day had that show on TV, and they took a stock motor, and I forget what the ring gap was, maybe 16 degrees, 16 thousandths. And you gotta open that up a little bit. Now, if you're going to make 100 horsepower, you don't have to. But we usually open them up. We'll use maybe 6 degrees for every thousandth of bore, every inch of bore. About
6,000 extra per inch of bore.
Yeah, 6,000.
Okay.
I think it's 4.5 to roll it up. And that will give you a nice gap. And still, because that thing gets hot, there's more heat there. And they butt up together. They can't go. They'll lift the lip on the usually on the exhaust side, by the exhaust valve. They'll lift that up. And it just destroys the motor. But so if you're going to make big horse, but they made like, I forget, 350 horsepower. They just kept putting a jet in it, stock cast pistons.
Yeah, they did.
Was going to blow up.
They went up quite a bit until it blew the ringland out on one of the pistons. It was still running.
Still running. Well, lifted the pistons. Half the pistons gone when they got done.
But it was still running. I mean, you couldn't see because of the smoke screen in there. But up until that point, I don't remember I think they got on the nitrous like about 3,500, 4,000 RPMs and rated up to like 6 or something reasonable. But it was still like a stupid amount.
It was a great show.
It was like 200, 250, something like that. It was either 200 or 250. They got to, and I think they stepped up to a 3, and it just all went south.
Well, it needed forged pistons, and you can. I bet
it was on cast pistons too.
Yeah.
I mean, they just wanted to see, and they saw. But you see, that goes to show it's something you mentioned before. Was that? Sorry about that. One of my cats jumped up here.
Threw a rod out of it.
Yeah, actually, she did. She just did. But no. What I was saying is, even on a cast piston setup, okay, if you treat it mildly with a nitrous setup, you can run it.
Oh, sure.
And just be wise with it. Proper fuel, proper timing. Like you said, ring lands. Just be wise about it. You can do it. It's just when you get a little, let's say, adventurous with it.
I've seen guys run as little as 10 degrees total timing. They got so much things going on in there. Can you believe that? Total timing.
Now, when you talk about that, like some of the bigger pro mods and some of the grudge and stuff like that, you hear of 4 and 5 nitrous kits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, clearly they cannot be running the biggest jets in each kit. There's absolutely no way. So are they running them? Are they running that? Are they running that to control the power by having all the multi-kits? Is that what it is?
If they just hit the nitrous at 3,000 and they had 600 horsepower, you just blow the tires right off the car. So, in essence, instead of having a slider clutch like a fuel car has, I mean, they give it so much and then bring them, and they don't necessarily run all 5 kits. They might run. They don't tell you their secrets, but they'll look at the track. They'll use 1 to 3 to 5. And maybe only have 3 kits going down there, or they'll have them on top with the what's that? What do they call that? The suicide button. In other words, if they're going down the track and they're side by side, and they got one little
override,
and they just hold their breath and hit that button, and maybe it moves them up half a car, and they win the race, but they take out 2 pistons.
Yeah.
Only there in emergency.
They
win the round.
But now, what do you think that is? Do you think that is just bumping the timing, or is that adding a kit without changing the timing? What do you think that might be?
Well, it's just too much nitrous. You get to a point where you don't have as much. You don't have enough foam rubber in the cylinder with it. You have a lot of. You can't just keep going like that because you got to remember you're taking away when you're displacing the normal air. There's a lot of normal air still in that motor, so there's a lot of nitrogen still in that motor. But when you replace it with nitrous, you're putting in nitrogen also with nitrous, but you're putting it in at 30. Well, what is it? Just from 100%, so it's 65% as opposed to 80%. So if you're taking in normal atmosphere, you're getting 80% nitrogen. If you're putting nitrous in, you're only getting 65% nitrogen. So the people don't understand that, a lot of them. And so all of a sudden, you're getting rid of your shock absorber. And you got way too much oxygen going. So that's why nitrous is good, but you can't depend on it to go to 60 pounds of boost.
Gotcha. That totally makes sense. Now, Mike, tell us about your business that you're involved with now, and how can people get a hold of you?
Well, we sold the Holly and we signed an agreement. We couldn't, typical big business makes you sign agreements. They don't want you competing with them, and I didn't want to do that. I worked for them for a couple of years actually, as a consultant. They didn't do anything I told them to do, but. That's what happens when you sell your business. But anyway, they had it. They bought everybody in the industry now. And we got paid well, Dale and I. And we went our separate ways, but we remained friends. I asked him if he wanted to get back into the nitrous, and he's telling me he was going to do this thing with compressed air. And so he's doing that. And I didn't know anything different. I'm not a scholar. So I said, I'm going to fill nitrous bottles and maybe I can sell some jets and make a living in my retirement. So we took the money we got from Holly and we invested it. It's kind of a retirement. That's another issue, but uh, the shop is no. We're just I don't advertise and push. I still enjoy the racing. Like I said, I went to uh, where was that? Ohio last weekend, and IHRA looks like they're really coming around. I'd like to participate with them a little bit. And after that disaster they had, that I saw that the guy got injured with the fire, I said, why don't they do this? Why do they? So I pitched him on. We got a valve because we had just done a valve for the Formula One drifting guys, and I said it needs to be in drag racing. I says these guys they're going to kill themselves because I watched many times on. You've probably seen it being on the tube. These guys do a burnout and they backfire. The car catches fire, and it's a Chinese fire drill. Like diesel cops are running around the car. They don't know what to do. You got to shut the damn bottle off. And nobody does that. So the bottle just goes till it peters out. The fire extinguisher, by that time, the whole front end of the car is on fire and the car's burning on the ground at the starting line.
Right.
And there's just ashes down there. And it's a shame.
It is.
There's nothing trick about this valve. It's an on and off valve. The guy reaches down and pulls it. It's not a commercial ball valve. I mean, you could do it with that, but they leak and they do a lot of things. This thing was really done up well. It's 70-75 aluminum, got a stainless steel ball in it, very smooth act, and it's a Dash 8. We have it for Dash 6 for the roundy round guys because they don't, you need that volume, but our guys, well, they don't even need 8, but we have 8 for the guys that were bigger is better. But and then we just rigged it up so it's on a Morris cable, and it goes out the back of the car, and a guy can pull the thing. Now, you brought up the fact that you could do it with a stick if it's too hot.
No, what I was saying was, also when I see most of the cars catch on fire, they have the push-off switch so you could go ahead and kill the fuel pump and stuff. And sometimes when the car's on fire, it's too hot. So I think there needs to be a stick, some kind of safety stick that the safety safari or the track
could be on the starting line, hanging on.
They can be able to go up there, and if they can't get to the car because the flames are too hot, they can push it off 10 foot back.
Well, it's just a T-bar. I thought I had one on my desk here, but it's just a nice T-bar. You've seen them.
Yep.
Yeah. We're gonna post it
on the page as soon as this.
A guy could just a little cloth thing that would go on it and do it. I don't think you want the thing hanging behind the car 3 feet. You want it right on the bulkhead of the. My thoughts were, if the fire's back there by that time, the valve's not going to do you any good anyway. But
you got other issues going on.
Now you can. It doesn't have to be in the back of the car. That's up for the sanctioning bodies to see. You can bring that cable and just roll it around to the side of the car and have it on a quarter panel, or coming out by the door jamb or something.
Right.
I actually, when we did the Formula Drift, I wanted to put it on the back, and their argument was, well, some of these cars will spin out and go into the wall and and hit the back of the car and just bend that cable all out of shape.
Right.
And, or they can't get to it. They'll come to a stop with the car backed up to the wall.
I got you. That makes sense.
But the drag racers don't usually do that. They're usually
right. Now, Mike, you run Nitrous Supply. That is your business that you supply nitrous parts to. What all kind of different parts do you offer at Nitrous Supply?
Well, we have kits, of course, and we sell kits. I don't advertise a lot, and I just it's kind of a cross between, I shouldn't say it, but it's a hobby shop and a retirement. But we do things. I don't need these kits to go out of here. God, I mean, when we were NOS, they were going out of here. We were doing thousands of kits. And they were just rolling off the assembly line we had. We got about 30 people working. But here, it's onesies and twosies, and I kind of hand do them, drill the plumb manifolds. I really concentrate on. I've got some nozzles that flow more than a lot of the standard stuff out there. Nobody really, if they ask me, I tell them I can flow them. I got a flow bench and I can flow stuff in. And all I did is flow the stuff and I get it to work. I got some new titanium ones now. I took some of the L block out in the bit. When we sold, the sales reps we had were L block reps. And they sold L block, they sold NOS, they sold all the good names that were in the industry.
Right.
Well, when Holly was in their buying mode, they were buying up all these companies.
Right.
And Vic came to us, Vic Elbrock, and he wanted to buy the company, us. And so he could run with Holly, as a competitor. And he's out here. But anyway, we sold the Holly. They were in a buying mode. But after a while, Vic actually passed away. I was still friends with a lot of people up there in the sales reps. And they called me one day and said, they're getting out of the nitrous business. It just wasn't working for them. Do you want to buy everything? So I went up there and the guys gave me this manifest of all the stuff they had there, nozzles and jets. They copied a lot of the old NOS stuff. And I went up there and I said, well, I'm not in the buying mode. And I made them a soft offer. And I left. And about 2 days later, the guy calls up and says, bring us a check and you can take the whole place. So I went up and I got a check and a couple trailers and rented a couple things. And they had to get out of there because they sold the business and they sold the warehouse, the distribution center. So all the workmen were just throwing everything and the brother into the trucks. So they got me everything. Now, there's a lot of stuff that I would have liked to have that they had already sold, but jets and fittings and plates. And I got a bunch of old Quadrijet plates that, God, I'll sell them for $1 a piece there. Hey, nobody has a Quadrijet anymore. But
I do.
A lot of titanium. Do you?
Yes, I do.
I got a plate for you. Make 250 horsepower.
There you go, Robert.
We'll discuss that later.
What it was and he had some titanium nozzles. And they're an inch lighter. I mean, I don't know. We build them out of stainless because some of the aluminum ones were breaking when you get tires shaking, engine shaking. After a while, the nozzle would break right on the manifold. So we made them out of stainless, and that cured the problem. But these titanium ones, I took the Elbrock one. I really didn't like the way their flow rate was, so we modified them. And I cut them all up and did them a little differently, but they're still titanium. They're built the way I like to see them. They flow like crazy, and they're for a straight shooter into a manifold. So we have those. So I press release them and without trying to spend a ton of money on ads.
Right.
And
I got that picture, and I wanna post it up here real quick of the shutoff.
Yeah.
So want to throw that up there for everyone to see.
See, you have where it says nitrous shutoff. That's just kind of wedged in there, but that would go on the back of the deck. It's a bulkhead like fitting that would come out of the back of the deck. The reason I made that like that is so I could take that arm off there and put it in my little carry-on bag and take it to the races last weekend. But I wouldn't fit with that arm on there and the length of the tube, so I made it shorter. And then when I got to the races, I made it longer. But
well, I know TSA had to do a lot of questioning to you, didn't they?
Yeah, they always do. They see solenoids in there, and they look like little. They think the wires are fuses,
Right.
They pull them. They go, "What's this?" And then you tell them. And I haven't.
Right. You pull out a 9-volt battery, and that's when they call security. So never mind. We don't need to talk about that. but I tell you what, Mike, we encourage everybody, if you're needing nitrous parts, to look up Nitrous Supply. Okay, if you're needing advice, if you're needing your system flowed, if we need your system plumbed, give Mike a call at Nitrous Supply. As you can see, this is just the tip of the iceberg of the man's knowledge of what's going on. It also tipped the iceberg of the conversation we've had earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike and I have talked twice, and each time I've taken away a big chunk of knowledge to myself that I had no idea.
So you're constantly learning. Nitrous.
No. No.
I don't know. I'm learning all the time. Even in my age, I love learning about this stuff. And there's a lot of things that I don't know. I mean, I'm learning all the time things, and I'm always absorbing this information that I like. I wish I had another 30, 40 years, because I've just scratched the surface.
Right.
I think there's a place for nitrous. I'd like to see turbocharge. We've done a lot of turbocharging in nitrous, and we can actually. What makes a turbo go is the exhaust, and when you punch that thing, you have to wait for it to pump exhaust out the header before it gets the boost up in the turbo. Well, when you stick a nitrous nozzle in there and give it a little fuel and burn it, and you send that through the exhaust, you get a ton of exhaust, and it just spools that turbo up right now.
Yep.
And
I've
so
seen a lot of
they
people
really
on
go
the street.
together very well. Everything the nitrous isn't, the turbo is, and everything the turbo isn't, the nitrous is. So if you can make them compatible, you really get a performance advantage. And IHRA has a class for that. That's their super class. So they allow them to run nitrous and turbos. And nobody's hitting home runs. Yeah, I just learned that over the weekend. I didn't know. I need to find out a little more about it. Because they were even saying nitro. I think the guy made a mistake. Some of these guys are preaching nitro on pro mods. Oh, all you got is a funny car with doors. 10% setback. You're going to have problems.
The good thing about it is IHRA has a big following with nitrous cars, and they got classic nitrous cars. PDRA has a nitrous exclusive class to really showcase the nitrous cars. NHRA, nitrous is still popular in the sportsman classes, top sportsman, top dragster, and some of pro mod. So there's still a lot of places, not to mention street, not to mention no prep racing, back of the track racing, which big time has a lot of nitrous. There's still a lot of nitrous racing out there.
Yeah, it found its home in drag racing. I mean, because you make a run and the bottle's empty after a few passes. A guy called me and wanted to go up the Grapevine out here in California in his motor home, and he says, I was going to put a turbo, but that's $3,000. And somebody said to call you, your kit's not that expensive, and I can climb that thing and have the same power. I said, wait a minute. You're gonna have the thing on for 10 minutes. I said, you're gonna go through about $300 worth of nitrous. The turbo's taking advantage of the free air that's in the atmosphere.
Right.
Nitrous doesn't do that. So it's got a place in drag racing, but
Gotcha. But Mike, I tell you, from all of us on our side to you, I wanted to tell you thank you very much for coming on tonight. Your patience to come on here with the technical difficulties that we had, okay? And you taking the time out to share a little bit and teach us quite a bit about nitrous. I wanted to tell you thank you so much.
Had a lot of fun. Enjoyed it.
I want to thank you for, coming up with NOS and doing all the things that you had done in the past to make the product. If it wasn't for you, the products would not be what they are today.
Oh, I think the guys would have reinvented it, and it would have been another group. But I'm a drag race junkie. I mean, I've been going to Lions and tried my hand at funny car, learned that this is out of sight financially. I don't know how they do it today. I mean, these guys are, if you don't spend $4 million a semester, a year, you'd be lucky to qualify. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's true. But seriously, Mike, are you planning on going to PRI?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a booth? You're gonna be. You got to set us up a booth there. You're gonna be
just
floating
walk
around.
around. I see a lot of good old friends of mine, and I don't try to sell everything that I make. I just enjoy the pursuit of it.
Well, we have to find you.
Something.
We have to find you when we go.
Well, call me. Yeah. I usually go. I go out. You know what I do? What I like, again, I hate to boast about everybody. I get with the Prox because he lives back in Indy, and he used to live out here, and I used to go to his parties and stuff. And we all go to dinner and just have fun and talk about it. And
sounds good.
By the way, I was going to say that's where I met Perdot. After he did all that, what he thought was damage, which really was a blessing, because it pushed us out into the street market where we could turn a buck and make some money, and all the street guys. And Tom, we were at a Christmas party, and Don was there, and Brock comes over to me and he goes, "Hey, Perdot wants to talk to you." This was after he did the all the stuff menagerie at the Nationals. And so I went over there and I said, "Hi, Don." He says, "I'm, Don Perdome." I said, "Well, you don't know me. I'm Mike." And he goes, I got to talk to you about nitrous because I didn't use nitrous, and I'm sorry if I hurt your business." And I looked at him and I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "Let me tell you." I said, nobody knew who I was. I watched every move you made. If you farted when you got in the car, I knew it. And so I said, I watched the guy fake the handle on, and he looked at me like, wow. I said, nobody knew who I was. I watched everything. And then I told everybody you didn't have nitrous. I think Billy Meyer won that event. And he had nitrous. But I said, but you know what? I said, we got banned. He goes, "Yeah, I'm sorry for that." He says, and I said, "Hey, Don, that was the best thing that ever happened. We were all caught up with all you fuel racers and chasing you guys around, and it set us straight and got us out in the street market. And that where the warehouse started, we used to sell Summit and big numbers and Jags and all of them, and we built a career around it, and we learned a lot. And we had, dynos and engineers, so we had it working for us. It helped us get along. I think my computer's going to die here.
Oh, no. Well, Mike, we're going to let you go for tonight, but I wanted to tell you again, thank you very much for coming on and joining us on the Spot Motorsports Media. We appreciate it, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Well, thank you for having me. It was fun to get off and talk, show off a little bit. I get a kick out of just blowing steam. So,
and we appreciate it, and we look forward to it, and we look forward to seeing you at Indy.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll look you guys up. You got my phone number if you just call me on my cell phone.
I absolutely will. All right, Mike. All right. Well, listen, buddy, we hope you have a wonderful night.
Okay, you guys do.
All right. Take care, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
I'll tell you what a great show, and talking about the history of Mike Thermos and, how it all came about, nitrous, NOS, and, of course, he doesn't take a whole lot of credit. Like you said, someone will figure it out, but, I'm very appreciative of him for myself and all the nitrous guys that use it. Like you said, Mike's the godfather of nitrous, and everybody really appreciates him.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a wonderful man. A lot of knowledge, a lot more than he shared on here tonight. So learned a lot. And there's a lot of misconceptions that he cleared up. So I wanted to tell everybody, sorry for the delay coming on tonight. It was outside of all of our control. There was a technical difficulty, and we just had to wait it out until it got cleared up. So that was the delay. But you'll be able to go back and hear this interview again on both YouTube, Facebook, and it will be uploaded to Spotify pretty soon. But also we wanted to thank the people that we work with, Redline Synthetic Minerals, and also Scorpion Racing Products. And also we wanted to encourage everybody, if you have a Culver's that you go to, we recently went to another Culver's up in Indianapolis and had a good time. And so On the Spot Motorsports Media is Team Culver's. So we just want to encourage everybody to support them because they do support people, support teams, support racers, support local neighborhoods. So we encourage everybody to go to them.
Well, everyone, until next Thursday, please take care and don't forget, I'll never forget the men and women who sacrificed their lives today on saving others. 24 years ago now, 9/11 took place, and just about everybody you talk to, they remember where they were at that day, and so
Absolutely.
I just want to let everyone know, we'll never forget here at On the Spot Motorsports Media.
Absolutely.
Hope everyone takes care. See y'all later.
Everyone have a good night.
Reliability to drive thousands of miles. Confidence for those who fly high. Redline oil products give you the power to crush the competition. And a track record of being the best. Redline oil products. You push it to the limit, we'll protect it.
Ready to take your engine to the next level? Scorpion Racing Products delivers precision-engineered, high-performance rocker arms that dominate the track. 100% CNC machined in the USA with aerospace-grade aluminum for unmatched strength and durability. Our rocker arms handle extreme conditions with multiple ratios available to fit your needs. Backed by our exclusive lifetime warranty. When performance matters, choose Scorpion Racing Products. Proven, reliable, unstoppable.